Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Ute Dash. I am Sammy Mora, and as always, I am joined by the wonderful Cole Bagley. Cole, how are you today?
Doing good. Utah basketball actually really surprised me yesterday, so we're in a good mood today.
We are in a good mood. You know why I'm in a good mood, Cole?
Why?
The Red Rocks. The Red Rocks. Can we just talk about these gymnasts for a hot second? That was by far last night one of the best meets I've seen, and that was the best meet that this team has had up to this point in the season. Okay. And so, for those of you who are not aware, Utah just steamrolled Washington last night, 197-475 to 194-3, which, to put that into like a football or a basketball term, I'll put it in a football term. I think that's winning by like 30 or 40. Like that's a huge victory. To win by almost 4 points, that's insane. That's huge. I love gymnastics. I love the Red Rocks. But this was a huge meet. Miley O'Keefe, she finally did it. She finally got her 10 on beam that she has been chasing since her freshman year last year. She got really, really, really close multiple times last year, and she's been really, really, really close almost every single meet this year. And she finally did it. That's huge. This was only the second. Last night was only the second 10 that had been scored in the country up to this point in the season. At this point last year, do you know how many 10s we'd scored, Cole? Or were scored across the country, I mean?
At this point last year?
Yeah.
3.
11.
Oh, okay.
11 had been scored at this point in the season last year, and then now it's 2. I think there was a couple of 10s that came out today. I'm not 100% sure. I think Iowa State scored one. I think Iowa might have 2. I'm not sure. But Miley got the 10. Good for her. And then literally on the next routine on beam, Abby almost scored a 10 as well. Abby scored a 10 last year at UCLA when they really needed it to win. And so Abby got, one judge actually gave her a 10 and the other one didn't. So it evened out to like a 9.95, I think is what it evened out to, which is barely good.
Sammy, can you explain like how hard it is to get a 10? Like in like football terms or basketball terms, like how difficult really is it for a gymnast to get a 10?
Getting a 10 is like having a perfect passing game for like a quarterback. You know, sometimes they get really close, but other times it's really hard. But when you're an elite level gymnast like Miley O'Keefe or Abby Polson or Sydney Skolowski, who I'm going to talk about in a second, it's more attainable. And also Utah has the elite level gymnasts that you can be getting these high 9.95, high like possible 10 scores almost on every single routine. So for like a team like Utah, it's not that difficult because you have the elite who have done this for their entire life. But for some other schools, it's kind of a difficult thing. But Sydney, he almost got hurt. She's been chasing for years now. And again, one judge gave her 10, the other one didn't. So the scores even out. So how they do scoring in gymnastics is you have 2 judges and they average out the 2 scores and that's how you get your score. So Miley, when she got her 10, obviously both judges agreed that was a 10-0 routine and they gave it to her. Abby, I think one judge gave her a 9.95 and the other gave her a 10 and it averaged out to a 9.975. Same with Sydney. But she is the floor queen. Sydney Skolowski, I love her. She's so talented, and you could tell that she was really having it after that floor routine last night. It was so fun to watch her. I love watching her do her double layout. It is so beautiful to watch. But I think another way to compare like scoring a 10 in gymnastics is to a no-hitter in baseball. It's something that you kind of strive for, and then when you get it, it's like, haha, it's a big deal. But honestly, this is the other thing I wanted to talk about is honestly, I think this Pac-12, this Red Rocks team is I don't see who can contend with them for the Pac-12 this year. That might be a hot take, but I don't think so. I've been watching a lot of gymnastics as of late because it's finally gymnastics season. And the rest of the Pac-12, like whether it be training, not being able to train as much because of COVID or because like the season is still so new, not a lot of teams look good. Washington last year gave Utah a run for their money, and this year they handled them with ease. It was very much like a go in, get the dub, get out situation. And then UCLA, who's usually always really hard on Utah. I'm not They looked a lot better this week, and I want to see how they look next week, but I am also not worried about UCLA anymore. But I think that this team is setting themselves up really, really, really well. And also, I would just like to point out that the 197-425 or 475 that the Red Rocks scored last night was the second highest score in the country up to this point in gymnastics.
Wow.
That's huge. And like considering that the only team that scored above them was Florida, who's ranked number 1, and Utah's ranked number 4. So that means Utah outscored Oklahoma and LSU, who are ranked above us. So don't be surprised if Utah jumps up in the rank on Monday, and also don't be surprised if if Miley O'Keefe is Pac-12 Gymnast of the Week. Like, huge. I also think it's really important to note that like now Utah has enough, even if like the rest of the season was kiboshed, which, knock on wood, let's hope it's not. Utah would have enough scores to qualify for postseason, which, coincidentally enough, one of the regionals is being hosted here in Salt Lake. So that's fun because that's going to be some high quality gymnastics to watch come end of March, beginning of April, which I'm very excited for. But that's my little Red Rocks tangent.
What sets Utah gymnastics apart from the rest of the Pac-12? What about the program? Is it the coaching? Is it the recruiting? You know, what really puts them on this high pedestal?
Well, you know that Utah's one of only like 2 programs that has never missed an NCAA championship. There's been like 40 something NCAA championships, and Utah's never missed one. And you have that legacy of having these stellar gymnasts. You've had Olympians go through this program. Michaela Skinner is one that most people know that's a newer name. Missy Marlowe's another one. You've had all of these huge like gymnasts come through and run this program. 10 national championships, that's tied for the most in the country. So they've set themselves up with this legacy of being really good at gymnastics. And I think it is coaching. Tom Farden does a fantastic job with his staff. Same with Carly Dockendorf and Garrett Griffiths and Courtney McCool-Griffiths. This staff is fantastic. It's a legacy that the Marsdens started, and it's carrying over into like now, the now era of gymnastics. And yes, UCLA is the only other team that can, I think, recruit at the same level Utah can, because UCLA also has quite a few national championships to their name. But ever since Valerie Konos-Field stepped down as their head coach, you've kind of seen, last year was kind of was different because you still had majority of the kids that, you had Kyla Ross, who's just like a boss. She's like an Olympian. She's fantastic. And you had Madison Koshin, who's also an Olympian on that team. And this year, neither one of those girls are on that team. So you're going to see some turnover with gymnasts. Plus, they lost a lot of routines, and Washington did as well. So with gymnastics, when you lose an upwards of 12 routines, that's like losing your entire defense, and you have to rebuild. Or losing 11 out of your 10 starter, or 10 out of your 11 starters on defense. That's what losing like 12 routines is, because that's a big bulk of your line 6 and you get 4 events. So that's like half of your routines are gone. So I think Utah's just they're just a good team. Like, they've established this legacy as being a gymnastics program in the West Coast, and I love it. They're so fun to watch.
And where does a lot of their recruiting come out of?
All over. So we have a couple of girls from the state, but most of them, Adrienne Randall's from California. Same with Jillian Hoffman, Crystal Issa, and Lexi Bircher from Nevada. Cammie Hall's from Virginia. Lucy Stanhope's from England. Sydney Solowski's from Canada. Jaylene Gilstrap's from Texas. Did I say her already? I might have. I'm not sure. Emily LeBlanc is a transfer, but she went to Maryland, but she's from North Carolina. So it's not like football where you get one girl, like you focus it on one area. You try and get the best gymnasts from across the country. Miley's from Vegas as well, from Minnesota. So you kind of just go where the good gymnasts are. That's the thing.
Well, that's awesome that they're able to pull, from so many different places and backgrounds.
Yeah. And Utah's such a reputable team that it's like, if you get an offer from Utah, you're an elite level gymnast. You know it for a fact. So, but that's my little gymnastics tangent for the day. So shout out to Utah gymnastics. Also shout out to Utah volleyball. We jump over the second topic. Number 8 volleyball swept Cal today, moving to 4-0 on the season, which is huge for this program. Love that for them. But Cole, let's talk some basketball now. How yesterday was a journey, you know. Red Rocks won late last night, but the Running Utes came back from behind yesterday afternoon. So, are the Running Utes rounding the corner finally, Cole?
No, they're not. But yesterday was a good victory. I think it's hard to say that yesterday is really a foot in rounding the quarter or a foot in the right direction, and it's because it was kind of the perfect situation in the second half. They didn't play a full 40 minutes of basketball, and it was kind of just a stellar performance by really one individual, kind of a few of the other guys as well. But just to introduce things, Utah trailed by 19 points yesterday to Colorado, and Colorado is one of the better, I think, one of the surprises of Pac-12 basketball this season, one of the better teams. Up until I think yesterday, they were really being considered for
were they an at-large team?
Not necessarily, but they definitely were in the conversation for making it into the tournament, the Pac-12 or the NCAA tournament. Kind of as one of those dark horse teams that nobody wants to play, that could maybe make it through the first and the second round. But Utah beating them yesterday may have heavily impacted that. So we love that. We love Utah beating up on Colorado because they seem to do it pretty often.
Consistently. Utah football, Utah basketball. I'm pretty sure if Colorado had a gymnastics team, that would also happen. But they don't have a gymnastics team, so.
I saw a meme yesterday that was like the two beefy, strong arms shaking hands, and it was like Colorado football, Colorado basketball, and the shaking hands was giving up big leads to Utah.
Leads to Utah. I saw that too. That's a quality meme. So if our friends over at Buff Stash are watching this, Jason and Kieran, we're not sorry, you know?
Nope, never are.
Never are.
So the guy that made the biggest difference yesterday was Alfonso Plummer.
Green light Plummer.
He went off. He had 0 points in the first half, went for 23 in the second half. He was 4 of 6 from 3-point range. Utah actually started the second half 0 for 5 from 3-point range, and this was at the point where it just looked like the game was completely over. They were down 19 points. They were shooting like 33%, and I was watching the game, reporting on it, and I just thought like, oh boy, this is going to end up being like a 30-point loss, probably the worst of the season. But then Plummer checks in, he hits a couple shots in a row, lifts the team's confidence. He helps Utah hit 5 of their last 6 3-point shots. He was just an absolute flamethrower. I mean, they were kind of comparing this performance to Alfonso's performance in the Pac-12 tournament, I believe last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't miss. It was crazy deep 3-pointers. It was fadeaway jump shots. It was, he got a mismatch a couple times and beat this defender to the rim. And he's not a big guy. He's pretty small. But he was just putting together a really fantastic game. Overall, Utah went on a 31-13 run over the last 9 minutes. And I think really what happened was Colorado just got way too complacent, and they thought the game was over. But everybody thought the game was over. I don't think there's a single person. Well, yeah, I remember talking to you about it, and just looking on Twitter and stuff like that. I mean, everybody was like, "Okay, this is bad, and this is going to end bad, and this is just probably going to end up being the worst loss of the season." And it also, when it was a 19-point lead for Colorado, that's when the commentators were like, "This is what Colorado can do. This is why they could, be one of those scary teams to make the NCAA tournament." And then all of a sudden, Alfonso Plummer just took the game into his hands and flipped the script, and they ended up winning by 3 points.
But with the commentator, I have one question. With the commentator saying this is what Colorado can do, or is it just that Utah is just subpar? Like, is it both? Because we've seen Utah storm out to double-digit leads before, multiple times throughout this season, and 9 times out of 10, nothing comes of it. So is it just Utah, or is it Colorado, or is it both?
I think it's a little of both. I mean, Colorado has been they have a couple of pretty decent players. Their 3-point shooting was unbelievable in the first half. It leveled out in the second half. But no, I do think it'll be interesting to see how Colorado finishes. Yesterday may have ruined their hopes of entering the tournament. But no, I do think they're a good team. I think they have more talent than Utah does and more experience. But kind of to go back on that question that you asked originally, the reason I say that the Utes have not turned the corner is this is not really a replicable result. If Alfonso didn't go off, the Utes would have lost by 20 plus, probably, or pushing 30. And the biggest problem is often that Timmy Allen is just it's almost like the entire team just puts the offense on his back, and they expect him to do everything. But he's not, he's averaging 16.8 points per game, which is good. But that's not going to win ball games. He's not averaging 30, 35 points a game, to where it's like, okay, if we're down, he'll bring us back, or if it's close, he'll hit some clutch buckets. Now, especially in college basketball, you need a full team effort. And that's why this just isn't replicable, because the Utes often struggle to find consistent support on offense. And yesterday, they just lucked out that Alfonso decided to turn it up. But that's not an every game thing. It's like, it's really frustrating to watch, because going into a Utah basketball game, you're going to get 15 to 20 points out of Timmy Allen. That's a gimme. Mm-hmm. But you really don't know who else is going to contribute. There's been a couple games where Fonz has gone off and he's had 15 to 20. You've had Pela Larson, who's had a couple 15-point games. Brandon Carlson had 18 points a few nights ago. And so it's
Rylan Jones with the consistent 5 points.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, it's just it's really it's tough, and that's why I say that they haven't turned that corner, is because you can't count on what happened yesterday to happen again. You're gonna get a lot from Timmy Allen, but you're not gonna get enough, and then you don't know where the rest is gonna come from. You don't know if it's gonna be Fonz. You don't know if it's gonna be Carlson. You don't know if it's gonna be Pela. You do know for sure that Rylan Jones is not going to do much, but that's not what we're here to talk about today.
You just love to hate on him, don't you?
He continues to just be terrible, and it's really frustrating. I think he's lost the starting position in my eyes, and it's frustrating that for whatever reason, Coach K continues to keep him in the starting lineup. I'd rather see Ian Martinez start. I'd rather see Alfonso step back into the starting lineup over Rylan, but I'm not the coach.
That actually, what a great say. I really So, with that being said, if you were Mark Harlan, what are you doing about the basketball program? Utah basketball 7-7 currently. We're at least 500. That's all I can say right now, because there's been times where overall, yeah, we're above 500, because there's been times where I've been like, we're a sub 500 team, and but again, there are some losses that should have been wins, and there are some wins that should have been losses. So maybe it should even out. Like, we shouldn't have lost to Cal, we shouldn't have lost to UW, but we shouldn't have beat State, and we shouldn't have beat Colorado yesterday. So it kind of evens out in my eyes. But if I'm Mark Harlan, okay, at this point, because of COVID, it is too hard to buy him out of his contract, because his buyout is steep. It is so high. But I think no matter how this season ends, Harlan needs to sit down with him and be like, shape up or you're out of here, because Utah fans are getting upset, and Utah fans are getting frustrated, and Utah fans are dreading basketball. The fact that Athletic Director Harlan is doing his podcast tomorrow, and it says drop questions down below for the Harlan podcast, and you scroll through the thread, and 95% of the comments are, when are you going to fire Larry? What's going on with basketball? Why aren't you firing Larry? Why aren't you firing Larry? It's just, people are fed up. You hold your football program, you hold your gymnastics program, you hold all these other programs to high standards, but yet you're letting your basketball team fall below. I don't know. But I'm also, if I'm Harlan, I'm already scouting out potential like replacements because I think he's safe for this year. If he's fired this year, that is a very surprising move by the athletic department. But next year, that might be his last year. Because you can't use COVID as an excuse to like not fire him because you don't have the funds. Like, yes, revenue's still going to be down, but you're still going to have more revenue coming in now than you have coming in now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's unacceptable. You know, over the last 3 years, Larry and the Utes are 40-36 overall and 22-24 in conference. He hasn't made the NCAA tournament since 2016. To me, that is potentially the biggest issue next to the record. You're in a Power 5 conference, a conference that's known pretty well for having decent basketball. I mean, you know, you've got UCLA, Oregon's been fantastic over the last couple of years, maybe the last decade. USC has had its heyday at times, and then Utah. Historically, Utah's been a pretty good, not elite, but a pretty good basketball program, especially in the 80s and 90s. Utah basketball was one of the better programs in the West, I'd say. But you haven't made that tournament in 5 years, and that to me is a kicker. That to me, if it wasn't for COVID, I think any other Power 5 school, if their program wasn't making the tournament,
he would have been gone
over 5 years. Absolutely, he would have been gone a while ago. And especially with over the last 3 seasons, you're barely over 500 overall, and you have to put into perspective that quite a few of those victories are coming from the beginning of the season, where you play garbage teams, where you play Idaho State,
when they beat Mississippi Valley State last year by like 90-something points. What was that?
Right, and that, but it's reflected in his conference record, 22-24. You're 2 games below 500 in the conference, and so the clock. I think the clock has technically expired for Larry. But his saving grace is that massive contract, and the athletic program, losing millions this year because of COVID. It's unfortunate that it turns out that way, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that lost their jobs because of, money and losing out on ticket sales and stuff like that. But it's just unfortunate that Larry is probably keeping his job because of that. So my take is, if you can find a way to cut ties now, if you can find some new coach that's willing to, that maybe doesn't have a ton of experience and can't demand a major salary, maybe you take the chance on that and see what that guy can do with the program. Because Larry just needs to be done. His time has run its course. He's losing games. He's losing talent. We've had way too many players transfer out of the program. And I worry that you might lose more. Who's to say that? I personally, I don't think that Timmy Allen is ready for the NBA quite yet. But he still, and with the COVID freeze, he still has technically 2 years of eligibility. Who's to say that he doesn't transfer somewhere else? Who's to say that? I think there's plenty of programs that would welcome Timmy Allen. I don't think it's a situation where exactly. And so I think he would find a home pretty quickly, and he might. I would not be surprised if Utah doesn't get above 500 this year and just continues to bleed, if we saw him put his name in the transfer portal this upcoming offseason. And so
that's a hot take.
It's just at some point it's just too much, and while there are certain benefits to being the star player on a team like this, there's
downsides too.
Yeah, there is downsides, because while yes, the offensive load is often put on his back, and it's impressive that he can do the things that he is. If I was a player, I'd rather be winning, A, and B, I'd rather be developing in a better situation where I have teammates that can play like me surrounding me so that I can become a better teammate rather than, okay, everything's on me. I have to churn these out and we're still losing. And he's not even necessarily it's not like Timmy Allen's putting up 25 and 10 a game, you know. He's putting up like 16.8 and like I think a little over 5 assists, maybe. I think it's between 4 and 5. And so I just think I just think that Larry's day should be done. If you wanted my honest opinion, I don't think it's going to happen this year just because of the buyout.
Yeah.
But next year, it's got to be done and over. And what I would tell him is I'd say, look, if you can't get above 500 this season, consistently. Like if you can't get above 500 this year and you're not pushing, you know, quite a bit over 500 next season, you're done.
Yeah, and I like how you brought up a coach that you think would not be as demanding with contracts. I think a name that like I personally would like to see in that running for the Utah basketball job when it becomes open, because it's not a matter of if now, it's a matter of when, is Craig Smith of Utah State. Mm-hmm. Look at what he's done with that program. He's turned it around. They went to the tournament they were almost in the tournament last year, and they had some play.
They won the
Mountain West.
Yeah.
Yeah, they won the Mountain West, and they would have made it to the tournament if it wouldn't have been canceled. So if you bring in someone like Craig Smith, who knows the state of Utah already as it is, and you give him the tools to play at a P5 and coach at a P5 school, I think that's fine. I think that's good, because you're not going to be able to get someone from another P5 school, because that's going to require lots and lots of money on buyouts. And if you're already paying a large buyout for Larry, why are you going to want to pay a large buyout for your next head coach? Because then you're just putting yourself into an even bigger hole. So,
well, and I hope that Harlan's also learned, why are we paying our basketball coach so much money?
And that wasn't Harlan's job. That wasn't on Harlan. That was on Dr. Chris Hill, because that was one of the last contracts he dealt with, if I remember correctly, before he stepped down as athletic director. Yeah,
so I hope Harlan learned the lesson from that. Do not pay someone that much money. We're not Kansas. We're not Duke. We're not UNC. We're not one of those programs that's consistently a contender for the national championship. It's like we haven't even made the tournament in 5 years, and we couldn't even win the NIT when we were in that tournament.
Yeah, I think, and you can't say that Harlan's not doing stuff, because you're seeing stuff like this take over in other programs at Utah. Right. Utah baseball, for example, last year, right before the season started, the baseball team announced that they had hired an assistant or an assistant head coach, or a grad, or like someone who's helping Killenberg, the head coach baseball, which he is also on the hot seat. And I told one of my colleagues he's finished to be fired, because Utah has won a Pac-12 championship in baseball, but I think they made it to the College World Series, but I think they lost in the first round. And the coach that they brought in took Texas A&M to like back-to-back College World Series in like his first and second year. So if you already have installed someone like that into your program for baseball, that's writing on the wall that you're not going to be there. So Harlan is doing his part for some of his teams, but I think that Utah basketball is the one that's struggling, because Andy Hill is technically considered head coach in waiting, but I don't like that hire. I don't like that.
Well, and one issue that I have with Larry K recently is I think Utah should be getting the top recruits out of the state of Utah, but they're not. They're going to BYU. They're going to Utah State. They're not like I pick on him all the time, but Rylan Jones is not I understand what he did in high school, but you have to understand that there's certain elevations required in talent, and he just hasn't proved that he has those. And kind of the same deal with Brandon Carlson. I like the kid's hustle. I like his tenacity, but I just think there's better players out there in the state of Utah than those two that Utah brought in, and you're not getting them. So if you're a Power 5 and you're not dominating the recruiting in your own state, something's wrong.
Yeah, look at Utah football. That's all I'm going to say is because we will dominate BYU and Utah State when it comes to recruiting in football. Yes, we'll still lose kids out of state to like Oregon or USC or something like that, but we're beating the teams here for the local kids. The class of 2020 or the class of 2019 is one of the biggest like bright spots of that. You get Van Fillinger, you get Xavier Carlton, you get all of these huge prospects from the state of Utah to commit to Utah. I
think Utah flipped that. I think if you would have gone 15, 20 years ago, BYU was dominating that.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's the P5.
But then I think Utah's flipped the script and they are now taking, and you'll occasionally lose a kid here and there. And a lot of that has to do with the religious aspect that BYU offers. And, you know, a lot of these kids, LDS kids, want to go play for BYU, but Utah football is still getting most of the best players. And Utah basketball should be able to emulate that.
They should, but they're not. And, you know, hopefully better and brighter days are ahead for Utah basketball because at this point, it's just kind of, it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch Utah basketball because you never know what team you're going to get. We've said it once, and we've said it many times. The one thing Utah basketball is consistent at is it's being inconsistent.
Well, and my final word of the day is the biggest issue that you can have as a fan, the worst mindset you can have is when you expect your team to lose every game and you're not surprised, but then when they win, it is a surprise. That's just not, I don't like having that mindset, but that's where I'm at. Yesterday, huge surprise.
Oh yeah.
I expected them to lose from the tip.
I remember
it looked like it was going that way.
Your text that I got from you during the game were like, oh my God, they're actually going to do this. Like, we shouldn't be surprised when Utah basketball wins, but yet here we are. But then also, like, they lose games they're not supposed to lose either.
And
so
that's the mindset of, I feel like, a school like Weber State or a UVU, right? That maybe schedules BYU early in the season and somehow pulls off a victory, right? That's a good surprise. That's like, or, you know, Utah and Alabama back in the Sugar Bowl, you know.
Mm-hmm. Underdog.
I don't mind the underdog, but I hate all right, well, here we go again. We should probably lose. Oh my gosh, we beat a team that's not even that good. I hate that.
I hate it too. But sadly, that's all the time we have today on Ute Dash. As always, we want you to just check out our website, dashsports.tv. We have columns up there. We have our podcast. We have videos. You can watch our show. You can watch Trojan Dash. You can watch Cougar Dash. You can watch Devil Dash. Any show about the Pac-12 produced by us, you can find on our website. While you're also on your computer or your phone or whatever, make sure you follow us on social media at Dash Sports TV on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Also, while you're on your phone, follow Cole and I. I'm at S_Mora99. Cole is at Bagley_Cole. We tweet fun stuff, you know, memes, athletic notes. It's a good time. But that's all we have for today. Cole, as always, do you want to give them a nice go Utes?
Go Utes, guys.